Hello, folks. Welcome to Reasoned UK. Thank you very much for your company as usual. I'm delighted to say today I'm joined by Richard Tice, the leader of Reform UK, formerly the Brexit Party, of course, a very successful political party, a businessman, a former MEP, and most recently a part of the Vote Power Not Poverty campaign, a campaign for a referendum on net zero. Now, as you might know, this is a subject very close to my own heart, and let's find out from the man himself why he set up another referendum campaign. Richard, you must be mad. You must be mad. You must not want a life.
Hi there, Darren. Hi, everyone. Look, you're probably right, actually. But do you know what? I quite like debate. I like discussing things, arguing things. And yeah, I trust the people. That's why I like referendums. Would rather have more of them, not less of them, when they're really big, important national issues. And to be honest, Darren, we're reading about it. We're all feeling it every day in our pockets when you fill up at the fuel pump, when you get a letter from your energy company saying that your electricity or your gas bills doubled overnight. And you're thinking, hang on, what's going on here? And I think that, we should have a proper national debate about why this is happening, about how actually it's totally and utterly self-inflicted, Darren. This is the thing. Westminster politicians will try and tell you that this is all due to Putin. It's not.
You could argue, right, for more than, 20 years, almost as long as I've been on the planet, the sort of cosy consensus or the collective view in certainly the Palace of Westminster and in the Westminster Village itself has been that renewable energy is what's needed to actually save the planet. Why aren't you convinced of this?
Look, it's very simple. The wind does not always blow. So what happens when the wind doesn't blow? How do you make electricity? Or are we basically saying we've got to have a stock of candles in the drawer to light up when the wind doesn't blow or when the sun doesn't shine? That's point number one. Point number two, could someone explain to me how wind fuels 25 million domestic gas boilers that create our hot water and our heating? It's a physical impossibility. And these foolish people in Westminster haven't asked themselves that simple question, or if they have, then they're lying to the British people. Wind power and solar power creates electricity. Electricity cannot fuel 25 million domestic gas boilers. And so then they might say, oh, that's very easy. Let's replace all the gas boilers. Let me tell you, they want to replace them with these things called heat pumps, Darren. Well, I know of more plumbers who are decommissioning the heat pumps they've already installed because they don't work, because they're noisy, they're inefficient, they're incredibly expensive to run, and they don't heat the water to the same temperature. So you might need bigger radiators. You might need a huge hot water tank that you previously didn't have. It's a complete and utter fallacy. So, one of my slogans I've been campaigning on is save our boiler. Actually, we all love a good boiler that keeps us warm and toasty and cozy. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, folks. It's very simple.
And what gets me, right, they wax lyrical about how good these things are and how cheap renewable energy, so-called renewable energy, is for the British consumer. But why then do they add 25% on to a standard electricity bill in subsidy, environmental subsidy, green subsidy alone?
I'll tell you why. Because there is a massive transfer of money from the poor to the rich, because the people who fund these wind farms and these huge solar farms, they're very often big multinational businesses, foreign-owned private equity investors, hedge funds, and they're receiving huge subsidies and they're making big profits at all of our expense. And as you say, on your electricity bill, and don't take my word for it, take the regulator's word for it, Ofgem. Go to their website, look at the nice little picture, and it says that just over 25% of your electricity bill is environmental levies, they call it. To you and I, it's a tax. And that tax goes to the rich landowners, the rich foreign investors who are making fortunes, as I say, at our expense. It is morally wrong. it's the reverse Robin Hood. It really is the reverse Robin Hood. And this is a con trick that has been literally has been proposed and forced upon all of us by the Westminster elite. And let's remember, of course, you see, the Westminster elite, they don't pay their own energy bills. No. Their second homes, they all get paid by the state. So they don't need to worry, do they? And all I'm saying is, our campaign, Vote Power Not Poverty, is a cross-party campaign. We're saying, look, we all want cleaner air. We all want to do our bit. The problem is that Boris's bit, his net zero, it's the wrong bit at the wrong price in the wrong time frame. And that means that actually it's not net zero, it's net stupid. Because we can reduce emissions in other ways, Darren. For example, I want to see many more solar panels on people's roofs. That's a good use of people's roofs. And then they can consume that power directly, for example, to provide electricity for lighting and for running your domestic appliances. That's fine. If we use the treasure under our feet, shale gas, which is the value of our national debt, then actually that is more sustainable. That will reduce emissions, because if you import gas, you have to liquefy it before you put it in a ship. And then when it gets here in the UK, you have to then re-vaporize it. That creates huge extra, like 3 or 4 times the CO2 emissions of using our own gas under our feet. And I say again, imagine inheriting a home from your parents or a long lost auntie, and they say to you, and by the way, there's a pile of treasure under the floorboards, Darren. We couldn't be bothered to dig it out, but we think the value of that treasure is about the value of the mortgage on the house. I'm pretty sure that you and your listeners would say, right, I'm going to go get a decent new screwdriver, and I'm going to lift up those floorboards and dig out that treasure, because that's how I'm going to repay my mortgage, right? It's basic common sense. And if you've got a dirty, rusty old screwdriver, then go and get a new clean one, right? We can do this. We can be world leaders in the best, cleanest, neatest ways to extract this shale gas. But I'm talking about real cash, real treasure that Westminster have deliberately chosen to ignore, and therefore deliberately exposed us to foreign actors, the Putins of this world. And I actually consider, Darren, that it's gross negligence of the highest order.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
people need to know about it. We need to be able to have a sensible debate about it. What's extraordinary, Darren, is that you and I, we struggled with the old Brexit thing. You suffered far more than me, but I mean, we've all got the scars on the back. I have to tell you that that was just a warm up for the abuse and the vitriol that this is triggering. I mean, in 10 days since we launched this campaign, we're astonished by the level of abuse that we're getting. And fundamentally, money talks. The vested interests in the green agenda, in the renewables. People are making so much money at the expense of the poorest in society that they don't want us to have a national. They don't even want us to have a national debate.
You were already cancelled, right? You were cancelled for booking a venue. Yeah.
So one venue cancelled. The abuse and the vitriol on the owner of the second venue, I can tell you, is horrific.
Wow.
Quite horrific. I've seen some of the messages and stuff. You cannot believe this. The abuse that I've had. And I've talked about it before. I had a commercial property mortgage application going up to investment committee for a rubber stamp approval for a new loan. The day after we launched this campaign, rubber stamping job, shouldn't have been any issue. They rejected it because it was me and I had the temerity to want to talk about different ways to reduce emissions. No, that didn't fit the consensus groupthink of the environmental sustainable green lot, and so it was rejected. And this is pretty scary stuff, actually.
It is. It is.
And I say, look, if you think it's bad now, we're at Everest base camp of the true cost of net zero and where it's going. We're at the foothills of the net zero cost mountain. And I repeat, Darren, we're not saying that we disagree with the science. What we're saying is, yes, there's global warming. Actually, that's what happens with climate. For millions of years, there's been climate change. You've had warming periods. You've had cooling periods. Yes, let's reduce man-made emissions in a sensible but crucially affordable way. So we all do our bit. But we think that we can do our bit in a smarter, more affordable way, using our own treasure, cutting the costs, but also cutting emissions, and that's the smart thing to do, and we should have a proper national debate about it. And when people are seeing these bills, and whether it's at the forecourt or their electricity or their gas bills, I think people are really interested in it, and it's the most important issue facing us today. Because my simple slogan is: if we don't do this, the old are going to die colder, poorer, sooner. And here's the thing, Darren, that net zero doesn't help the young. It's going to burden and blight the young, because you're going to be burdened with higher costs, fewer jobs, and less money in your pocket. Lots of young people won't even be able to afford to leave the parents' home. I mean, once you get to, I don't know, 19, 20, 21, most people basically want to flee the coop. And if you can't afford to do that, I mean, it's hard enough trying to rent or buy a home. But then if you can't even do it because you can't afford the energy to keep the lights on and to heat the place, well, we're not helping the young, we're burdening them.
You touched on energy security there, and I'm wondering, in the context of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I think that highlighted our lack of energy security in quite a sort of alarming way. Just how much capacity, Richard, do you think we actually have to keep the lights on and keep our homes heated? Because, for example, now the environmentalist lobby, as you well know, is saying, well, we can't go from Russia to the Saudis to the United Arab Emirates, right? We've got to rely on ourselves. And as you rightly say, 25 million boilers can't be powered by wind and solar. That's just, you just can't do that. So where the hell do these people actually want us to get our power from? Do they not realise just how serious this is? I mean, are we going to have to walk around in loincloths and live in caves, Richard, before we actually manage to sort of appease these people?
I think some of these people, you can just tell by looking at them and frankly sometimes smelling them when they go on their protests. Some of these people, that's actually how they do live. And fine, let them do that. But please don't tell us how to live our lives. And you and I may have had our run-ins with the European Union, but amazingly, Darren, the EU themselves have now designated gas as a transition green fuel. Why? Because they've realised for the next 30 or 40 years, until some better technology comes along, which it might do, and that's fine, let's keep investing in that. But until then, let's use our own treasure, right, that is here, that we have the technology to extract quickly, easily. So we should urgently be granting new gas licenses, new oil extraction licenses in the North Sea, urgently extracting our shale gas, using existing and new technologies, being aware all this stuff is there to do. It'll create lots of jobs, it'll slash the price of fuel, and it'll make us self-reliant. And it's a wonderful opportunity. And you and I, we love Britain. We love being good at stuff. And sure, we're all going to make mistakes. None of us are perfect. But I'm just a great believer. Let's try things. And if it's not quite right, you tweak it, you adapt it, you learn from it. You don't make the same mistake again, hopefully. But just look at America. America's gas bills are a fraction of ours. Why? Because they're self-reliant, using their own gas. What's their gas, Darren? Yes, it's shale gas.
Yeah, let's not forget, it wasn't President Trump, it was President Obama that started that revolution. And frankly...
In fact, it was even earlier than that. It was originally George Bush.
Right.
Who, the technology was evolving then. He approved it, as I understand, and then it started with Obama and then moved on. And
I remember seeing stats, Richard, when Trump, you remember Trump pulling out of the Paris Agreement, and people saying, oh my God, the carbon emissions from America are going to go sky high. Actually, carbon emissions under Trump continue to fall. And it's because they have in very sensible ways, gone with their national shale gas resources and been able to actually extract this stuff without having to ship it halfway across
That's
the
right.
world.
And here's the other exciting thing. And I love new technology. I love the old smartphones and computers and all that stuff. But actually, there's emerging carbon capture technology so that if you've got a gas-fired power plant, then the emissions, you can capture the emissions from the gas-fired power plant, and you can actually put it back into the shale a couple of miles underground where you've previously taken the gas from. So you get potentially a wonderful virtuous circle. So again, let's be a world leader in that.
What
Let's
do you
show the
say to
way.
people, though, that say, well, hang on a minute, Richard, I'm quite scared about water pollution, I'm quite scared about earthquakes and all this that some
Yeah, no, look,
tell us?
and absolutely fine. The reality is, in America, they haven't had any of this. And let's just look at this issue of earthquakes. Okay, an earthquake is designed anything above naught on the Richter scale, and the shale gas industry had to notify the authorities if they had any form of movement of zero point 0.5 or above. 0.5 may sound scary. 0.5 is the equivalent of you moving back your chair and standing up. That is a 0.5 earthquake. 1.5 is the equivalent of you standing up, picking a honeydew delicious melon, holding it out, shoulder out, and dropping it on the ground. That is 1.5 on the Richter scale. Okay, 2.9, which was the highest level that Quadrilla had when they started drilling their wells, 2.9 is the equivalent of a train going by out, or a lorry going by, or a bus outside your home. So just put this in context and realize that what they're talking about simply is misinformation at best. At worst, it's deliberate project fear. We've heard that term before, but that's what it is. And so, it's complete nonsense. And as for the issue of, chemicals and groundwater, again, the shale gas is extracted from about 2 or 3 kilometers underground. And it's all done in completely sealed pipes. Water, groundwater is just below ground. It's completely different, and it's very carefully controlled. And there are new technologies that don't even involve chemicals. So I'm saying technology improves. Fracking incrementally improves in its processes. The other technologies are different. They don't use chemicals. One of them actually uses an equivalent of baby oil. I'm saying, look, we've got to try this stuff. We've got to be a world leader. It's incredibly exciting. It'll create a whole load of jobs. And I actually think, Darren, and you know this better than most, in terms of leveling up, the opportunities from shale gas to level up huge amounts of regeneration and jobs and investment and money into the north of England, it's massive. And all over huge chunks of the north, not just around Blackpool, but lots of places. In Yorkshire and Derbyshire. Look, it's a great opportunity. It's possibly the fastest way to level up that we've got. But what we need is an open national debate, and yeah, I'd love a referendum on it. And I think the reason that Westminster doesn't is because they're terrified that, once again, Darren, they're completely out of touch with ordinary people.
What do you say to those that say, well, hang on a minute, Richard, I agree with you that we need to rethink this net zero stuff, but I don't think a referendum in which you're given a binary choice is the best way to go about it?
The issue is, yes, we live in a parliamentary democracy, and normally different parties have different views. But on this issue of net zero, of course, all the 4 parties that are represented, or 5 parties in Parliament, they're all outbidding each other to be more net zero than the other.
Yeah.
So voters don't have a legitimate choice. Now, obviously, we at Reform UK would like to get some places on the green benches, and we'll be standing at the next election on this. But if every party on your ballot paper is saying the same about net zero, you haven't
Which
got
they were on the EU, of course, before
Correct.
UKIP.
Which you haven't got parliamentary representative democracy. You've actually got essentially a single monopoly on this issue. So, and I'm just saying to people, what are you scared of? They want to change the way we heat our homes. They want to change the cars we drive, change the amount of delicious, wonderful meat that we eat. I love a good steak, Darren. They want to change the amount that we can travel. This is life-changing stuff. And for me, that is actually even bigger than a constitutional issue. This literally is, it's the constitution of how we live our lives. And we should have a proper national debate on it. And I think we should have a referendum on it.
Yeah.
And that's a very personal view.
Yeah, hopefully you do have the same influence as UKIP did on the Tories, because as you say, it used to be the case that it was just more European Union. That was all we had on the ballot until UKIP came along and gave us a genuine choice, an alternative. And that's what you guys are doing right now. And I think it's so really incredibly important because, Richard, you know as well as I do, you've been making the case on your talk radio show, but also on social media and in other media outlets where, frankly, to put it crudely, there's going to be a pretty big bloody rude awakening come the October energy bill statements, Richard.
If people think it's bad at the moment, as I say, we're at base camp. We're heading north up towards a very high cost mountain. And there's already talk that the bills in October could be 50% higher than the new bills people are hearing about for the 1st of April. And I don't know where this goes, Darren. All I know is that at some point, people are going to say, enough's enough, we're done. Whether they choose not to pay the bills or whatever, but something has to give here. And we're putting forward sensible proposals for the easiest thing to give. And until we've got self-reliance by using our shale gas and North Sea gas, actually what the Treasury should be doing is slashing all of these environmental levies, slashing the tax, slashing the VAT, the 5% VAT, which of course we now have the freedom and independence to do because we're a sovereign independent nation free of the EU. We couldn't previously do that. I do love the fact that that's the key plank of Labour Party's policy platform, despite the fact they didn't want to leave the EU. Goodness me, isn't it interesting how what comes around goes around? And those are the immediate things the Treasury can do. Actually, the government's balance sheet could easily absorb that little bit of extra borrowing involved, and we can make a real difference to people's lives in the short term, whilst we make ourselves self-reliant again as we extract the wonderful treasure under our feet.
I mean, Michael Gove has said, I don't know if you saw that he's levelling up secretary now. He's had more jobs than, I don't know, I think those on these 0 hours contracts. But Michael Gove says that he's not convinced by the arguments for fracking and that actually his free market colleagues aren't arguing for it. Well, one, I would disagree with that outright. There are voices like Steve Baker, for example, within his own party who is making the case. But Richard, unless I'm missing something, right? The case for doing fracking is very simple. If it doesn't work out, if there's no market demand for it, it will fail, and it will fail without any taxpayer subsidy. You can't say that about every other major energy policy decision made over recent times, can you?
It's a brilliantly made point. I'm just going to pull you up on one thing, Darren. It's really important. The treasure is the shale gas. Fracking is just one method of extraction. And even if you don't like that method, why wouldn't you actually say, well, I tell you what, let's try the other methods as well. Let's look at them all, try them all, and that way you can work out, you can learn from it. And but yes, the extracting shale gas, this treasure, it's free. We've all got a vested interest here, Darren, because we all own that shale gas. That's how it works. Okay, it's not owned just by the person who owns the land. Actually, the gas under our feet is owned by all of us. So we've all got this vested interest. The producers can produce it. You can dramatically slash your bills. Some will say, hang on, the producers will sell it onto the world market. No, the evidence in America is quite clear that actually when shale gas extraction started in America, very quickly, the actual price of gas plummeted. It reduced in the matter of 12 to 24 months, reduced by over 50% because there was more supply. And actually, what the government can do is give long-term purchase contracts to the producers of the shale gas, which means that they know what their costs are, they know what their sales price is, and that way everyone's a winner and we can have cheap, affordable gas. You're not exposed to the world market. You can avoid that. We can be self-reliant. And I think everyone in the UK is a winner. But I come back to this point, Dan. The reason there's so much vitriol and abuse is there are so many vested interests in the green lobby agenda. And this is what we're faced with.
Mm. Can I ask you about this stat? Because I was quite struck by it and I'm keen to know what you think. You know as well as I do that there were conspiracy theories during and after the Brexit referendum that we were all backed by Russia. You remember that one? So, totally mental. But with that in mind, what do you think about the fact that the UK currently, we're importing, 8% of our oil and 4% of our gas from Russia, but we've pledged to phase that all out by the end of 2022. Meanwhile, the EU has presented a plan only for gas, right? Gas imports are the only thing they're going to phase out. I thought, according to the conspiracy theories, it was Brexit Britain that would be licking Putin's boot, right? What's gone on here, Richard?
It's very simple. They are, in the EU, countries like Germany and Italy are dependent on Russian gas for 40 to 50% of their country's gas needs. They've been naive, foolish, and stupid in completely making themselves dependent on Russia. And I mean, Germany had a thriving nuclear industry. It had cheap energy, and it got rid of it all. And that is essentially this massive folly. So, and they realise that it's going to take them some time to reduce that dependency. We can do it faster. I think none of these plans are fast enough. And yes, I'm afraid it's going to require, in a sense, the short-term pain is that we're going to have to take, we need to slash the taxes to cut the prices. That means a little bit of extra government borrowing. Actually, we can afford that. The long-term, the prize in the medium term is so great. And in so many different walks of life, Darren, we've learned the importance of being self-sufficient, and self-independent. Whether it was, with COVID, with PPE, we were reliant on China. Actually, we need to be able to produce PPE ourselves. It's an emergency. With vaccine manufacturing, likewise, we were reliant on people overseas, plants overseas. We've built some of that up now, so that's good. So we're learning rapid lessons about the importance of being a sovereign, independent nation, able to be self-reliant on key elements of our critical national infrastructure. And that's vitally important.
Wasn't there evidence as well? There was evidence of Russia supporting campaigns to actually discredit fracking.
And there is evidence of that. I've looked at it. There's been lots of reports in the press, in various newspapers.
NATO even said it at one point.
It's clear the former Director General of NATO referred to it. And there's no question, not only here in the UK, but all across Europe, there were massively well-funded campaigns against shale gas extraction, which were very successful because Russia realized that if they could stop shale gas extraction in Europe, then Russia could become much more powerful and make much of Europe dependent on Russian gas. And in a sense, he was clever, he was smart, and they succeeded. And you just look at lots of these campaigns, very rarely were they run by local people. They were well-funded and people came from all over the place, very well paid. And I think people have just got to wake up and smell the coffee.
Finally, Richard, I wonder then, if people watching this, if they think, well, hang on a minute, I like the cut of this man's jib, right? I quite like everything he's had to say. I think there should be a referendum on net zero. I'm absolutely terrified of getting that October energy statement. What can they actually do about it? What would you recommend people do?
Sign up to our campaign. You'll get our information. If you can, come to our event a week on Saturday, 11 o'clock in Bolton. The details are on the website. But also write to your MP, write to your local councillors and say you're not going to vote for them again unless They allow us to use shale gas extraction to dramatically reduce our bills, and for them to remind their MP and the local councils that wind power doesn't fuel and doesn't make gas boilers work. It is as simple as that. And the moment people do that, then, and if possible, go to their constituency surgeries, make it very clear and get your friends to write as well. MPs are terrified of not being re-elected. They need to see it in their post bags, and we can make a difference. We can shape and influence. It's absolutely vital.
Richard, Godspeed, and thank you very much for your company.
Thanks for having me on, Darren. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Reasoned is a grassroots organisation that's entirely funded by people like yourself. So if you're in a position to do so, please do consider supporting us by clicking the link to the side there.